This flashcard shows a romantic proposal scene in a park. What do you see happening? It shows a man proposing to a woman. He's down on one knee, holding a ring box, and she looks so surprised. Their friends are all around them, clapping and cheering. It's a perfect scene to practice phrasal verbs.
Yes, it is. Let's start with the proposal. What phrasal verb could we use?
He's getting down on one knee to propose.
Right. Get down on one knee is a classic pose for a proposal. Now, if she wasn't expecting this, what phrasal verb could describe that?
She didn't see it coming at all.
Exactly. See it coming means to expect something, and here it means she was surprised. Now, if their friends knew about this in advance, what phrasal verb could we use?
They were in on it.
Good. In on it means they were part of the plan. If they decorated the area with flowers and balloons, what phrasal verb could describe this?
They set up the scene beautifully.
Yes. Set up means to arrange or prepare something, like the decorations here. If she says no, what phrasal verb would describe that?
She would turn down the proposal.
Correct. Turn down means to refuse or reject, though I doubt she would say no in this case. Finally, after she says yes, what phrasal verb could describe the friends joining the celebration?
They would join in and cheer them on.
Perfect. Join in means to participate, and cheer on means to encourage. Great job, Alex. How does it feel to use these phrasal verbs in a romantic setting?
It's fun. Thinking of phrasal verbs this way makes it easier to remember them.
I agree. Let's move on to our next flashcard. This flashcard shows a beautiful wedding scene. What do you see happening?
It shows a bride and groom beaming with joy on their wedding day. They're surrounded by friends and family, and it's a perfect moment to explore some phrasal verbs related to weddings.
Great. Let's start with how they look. What phrasal verb could describe their expressions?
They're both lighting up with happiness.
Perfect. Light up means to show happiness or excitement in your expression. Now, if they're about to start the ceremony, what phrasal verb could describe that?
They're kicking off their big day.
Exactly. Kick off means to begin something, especially an event. And if we talk about the bride getting ready earlier, what phrasal verb could we use?
She was dressing up in her beautiful gown.
Yes. Dress up means to wear special clothes for a formal occasion. Now, after the ceremony, what might they do at the reception?
They'll probably cut into the wedding cake.
Correct. Cut into can mean to start cutting a cake, especially at a celebration. Lastly, if they're saying goodbye to guests at the end of the day, what phrasal verb could work?
They'll be seeing off their friends and family.
Perfect. See off means to say goodbye to someone who's leaving. How do you feel about using these phrasal verbs in a wedding setting?
It's really helpful, Emma. It makes it easy to remember when I can picture the scene.
That's wonderful. Let's move to our next flashcard. This flashcard shows a romantic honeymoon scene in Paris. What do you see happening?
It shows a couple walking hand in hand under a giant full moon by the Eiffel Tower. The scene looks magical, and it's a perfect chance to explore phrasal verbs related to love and travel.
Lovely. Let's start with their walk. What phrasal verb could describe what they're doing?
They're strolling around the city, enjoying each other's company.
Exactly. Stroll around means to walk leisurely, often to enjoy the surroundings. Now, if they're looking up at the moon, what phrasal verb could we use?
They might be gazing up at the moon together.
Right. Gaze up means to look at something with admiration. And if they're holding hands, what phrasal verb could describe that connection?
They're holding onto each other tightly.
Yes. Hold on to means to keep a secure grip, which adds to the feeling of closeness. What about if they're feeling completely happy and in love in this moment?
They're soaking in the romance of Paris.
Perfect. Soak in means to absorb and enjoy an experience fully. And finally, if they decide to explore more places in Paris, what phrasal verb could describe that?
They could be heading off to new spots around the city.
Correct. Head off means to leave for a new place. How do you feel about these phrasal verbs in a romantic setting?
It makes it easy to imagine the scene, and it's romantic too.
Glad to hear it. Let's move on to our next flashcard. This flashcard shows a lively gathering at a beautiful garden resort. What do you see happening?
It shows a group of friends sharing a meal by the pool. They're toasting with drinks, smiling, and having a great time together. It's a nice scene to explore phrasal verbs related to socializing and dining.
Perfect. Let's start with their gathering. What phrasal verb could describe this kind of get-together?
They're hanging out together.
Exactly. Hang out means to spend time socially. Now, if someone wants to pour more wine into their glass, what phrasal verb could describe that?
They could top up their drink.
Right. Top up means to add more to fill it up. And if they're savoring the food, what phrasal verb could describe that?
They're digging into the meal.
Yes. Dig into means to start eating eagerly. What about if they're enjoying each other's stories?
They're soaking up the atmosphere and good company.
Perfect. Soak up means to fully enjoy or absorb the experience. And finally, if they're going to explore the resort after the meal, what phrasal verb would fit?
They might head out to see more of the place.
Correct. Head out means to leave for another location. How do you feel about using these phrasal verbs in a fun, social setting?
It makes learning them easy and enjoyable.
That's great. Let's move on to our next flashcard. This flashcard shows a cozy scene in a luxurious train cabin. What do you see happening?
It shows a couple sitting comfortably, enjoying glasses of wine together. They're smiling and looking relaxed. This is a good scene to discuss phrasal verbs related to travel and relaxation.
Great. Let's start with their choice of setting. What phrasal verb could we use to describe traveling in a relaxed, luxurious way?
They're kicking back on the train.
Exactly. Kick back means to relax and enjoy. Now, if they're sipping their wine slowly, what phrasal verb could describe that action?
They're savoring their drinks.
Savor isn't a phrasal verb, but it fits perfectly. If they want to keep enjoying the scenery outside, what phrasal verb could they use?
They could take in the view from the window.
Right. Take in means to enjoy or absorb something fully. And if they're about to start a conversation, what phrasal verb might we use?
They could bring up a topic to chat about.
Yes. Bring up means to start talking about something. Finally, if they're going to leave the train at the next stop, what phrasal verb could describe that?
They would hop off the train.
Correct. Hop off means to exit a vehicle, especially casually or quickly. How does using these phrasal verbs in a travel setting feel?
It makes it easy to imagine real situations and remember them.
Exactly. Let's move to our next flashcard.
This image shows two hikers walking along a mountain trail. They're wearing similar outfits and carrying backpacks with sleeping mats.
You're right. Let's practice some phrasal verbs related to hiking. What phrasal verb could we use to describe how they started their journey?
They set out early in the morning to climb the mountain.
Perfect. Set out means to begin a journey. The mountains look quite high. What phrasal verb could we use to describe climbing to the top?
They need to make their way up to reach the summit.
Good. And look at their matching green shirts and hiking gear. What phrasal verb could describe how they coordinated their outfits?
They matched up their hiking clothes and gear for the trip.
Exactly. Now, when hikers need to take a break on the trail, what phrasal verb could we use?
They can stop to rest up and take in the beautiful mountain views.
Perfect. Take in is great for describing how we absorb beautiful scenery. If they get tired, what phrasal verb describes continuing despite fatigue?
They need to keep on going to reach their destination.
Excellent. And when they finally complete their hike, what phrasal verb could we use?
They'll wind up at their campsite after a long day of hiking.
That's great use of phrasal verbs, Alex. Isn't it interesting how many we can use to describe a hiking adventure?
Yes, it really helps to learn them in contexts like this. The mountain backdrop makes it all very memorable.
I agree completely. Let's move on to our next flashcard.
This image shows two people at a cafe enjoying coffee and desserts. One person is dressed formally in a suit with a bow tie, and the other is wearing a beige sweater and holding a violin.
Perfect description. Let's practice some phrasal verbs related to this cafe scene. What phrasal verb could we use to describe how they started their meeting?
They met up at the cafe for coffee and conversation.
Good. And when they ordered their drinks and desserts, what phrasal verb could we use?
The waiter came over to take down their order.
Excellent. Looking at their interaction, what phrasal verb could describe how they seem to be getting along?
They're hitting it off really well, sharing smiles and conversation.
Perfect. The person with the violin seems to be a musician. What phrasal verb could we use to describe performing?
They might put on a performance at a concert hall later.
Good one. And when they finish their coffee and desserts, what phrasal verb would we use?
They'll wrap up their meeting and head out to their next appointments.
Excellent. If they want to meet again, what phrasal verb could they use?
They could set up another coffee date for next week.
That's a great use of phrasal verbs. Isn't it interesting how many we can use to describe a simple cafe meeting?
Yes, and the formal and musical elements make it even more interesting to describe.
Let's move on to our next flashcard.
This image shows a lovely family picnic in a park. They're sitting on a checkered blanket with lots of food and drinks spread out, enjoying a sunny day together.
Perfect. Let's practice some phrasal verbs related to this picnic scene. What phrasal verb could we use to describe how they prepared for the picnic?
They packed up all the food and drinks in a basket before heading out.
Good. And when they arrived at the park, what phrasal verb could we use?
They laid out the blanket and set up all the food and drinks.
Excellent. Looking at how they arranged the food, what phrasal verb could we use?
They spread out quite a feast: sandwiches, fruits, salads, and orange juice.
Perfect. And when families spend time together like this, what phrasal verb describes bonding?
They're catching up and hanging out together, making family memories.
Good one. If the weather turns bad, what phrasal verb would they use?
They would have to pack up quickly and head back home.
Exactly. And after the picnic, what phrasal verb describes cleaning?
They'll clean up the area and pick up any trash before leaving.
That's great use of phrasal verbs. Isn't it wonderful how many we can use to describe a family picnic?
Yes, and all the food and happy expressions make it such a cheerful scene to describe.
Let's move on to our next flashcard.
This image shows a wedding scene with 3 people in formal attire. There's a bride in a white suit and 2 men in navy suits with matching boutonnieres, and there appears to be some paperwork on the table.
Great observation. Let's practice some phrasal verbs related to wedding preparations. What phrasal verb could we use to describe planning a wedding?
They had to sort out all the wedding details and draw up the plans months in advance.
Perfect. When signing official documents, what phrasal verb could we use?
They're filling out the marriage paperwork and signing off on the documents.
Excellent. Looking at their formal attire, what phrasal verb describes getting ready?
They dressed up in their finest clothes and got done up for the special occasion.
Good one. When people gather for a wedding, what phrasal verb could we use?
Everyone shows up to celebrate and join in on the special day.
Perfect. After the ceremony, what phrasal verb describes the celebration?
They'll kick off the reception with dinner and dancing.
Excellent. And at the end of the day, what phrasal verb would we use?
They'll wind up the celebration and head off to start their new life together.
That's wonderful use of phrasal verbs. Isn't it interesting how many we can use to describe a wedding day?
Yes, and their happy expressions really bring the formal occasion to life.
Let's move on to our next flashcard.
This image shows what appears to be a legal consultation in a law office. There are 2 lawyers in suits meeting with a client, surrounded by law books and a judge's gavel on the desk.
Good observation. Let's practice some phrasal verbs related to legal consultations. What phrasal verb could we use to describe scheduling this meeting?
The client set up an appointment to meet with the lawyers about their case.
Perfect. When lawyers research a case, what phrasal verb could we use?
They look up legal precedents and dig into the details of similar cases.
Excellent. When discussing the case details, What phrasal verb describes explaining things?
The lawyers break down the legal terms and lay out all the options for their client.
Good one. If they need more information, what phrasal verb could we use?
They might follow up with additional questions or ask the client to bring in more documents.
Perfect. When making notes during the meeting, what phrasal verb applies?
They're writing down important information and jotting down key points.
Excellent. And at the end of the consultation, what phrasal verb would we use?
They'll sum up the meeting and draw up a plan of action.
That's great use of phrasal verbs. Isn't it interesting how many we can use to describe a legal consultation?
Yes, and the professional setting with all the law books makes it very authentic.
Let's move on to our next flashcard.
Here's a dialogue between Alex and Emma about the image of a young girl at a medical checkup. Using conversational English with B1 level vocabulary.
Look at this picture, Alex. What do you see happening?
It looks like a little girl visiting the doctor. She's holding a teddy bear, and the doctor is checking her with a thermometer.
Exactly. What phrasal verb could we use to describe what the doctor is doing?
I'd say the doctor is checking up on her.
Perfect. Check up on means to examine someone to see if they're healthy. And how does the girl look?
She seems to be cheering up. She's smiling.
Great observation. Cheer up means to make someone feel happier. And if the doctor wanted to tell the girl she'd be fine, what could she say?
Maybe she could calm her down by saying she's healthy.
Exactly. Calm down means to help someone feel relaxed or less worried. Now, if the doctor wants to make sure the girl isn't nervous about the visit, what might she do?
She might talk to the girl to make her comfortable.
Right. Talk to is simple, but it's a good way to make a patient feel comfortable. What do you think of these phrasal verbs?
They're really helpful, Emma. It makes it easier to understand the situation.
That's wonderful. Let's move on to our next flashcard.
Here's a dialogue between Alex and Emma about the image of a couple shopping for clothes, using conversational English at B1 level.
Here's a picture of a couple shopping. What do you see happening, Alex?
I see a man and a woman in a clothing store. He's holding up a shirt, and she's looking at him with a smile.
Great observation. What phrasal verb could we use to describe what they're doing in the store?
I'd say they're trying on clothes.
Perfect. Try on means to put on clothes to see if they fit or look good. And if they like the shirt, what might they do next?
They might pick out the shirt to buy.
Exactly. Pick out means to choose something from a group. Now, if they aren't sure about buying it right away, what could they do?
They might look around the store for other options.
Right. Look around means to explore or browse without deciding on anything yet. And if they're finished shopping, what might they do?
They'll probably check out at the register.
Perfect. Check out means to pay for the items you're buying. These phrasal verbs are very useful for shopping, don't you think?
Yes, it makes it easier to describe what's happening.
Glad to hear that. Let's go to our next flashcard.
Here's a dialogue between Alex and Emma about the image of a family shopping at a supermarket, using conversational English at B1 level.
Here's a picture of a family doing some shopping. What do you see, Alex?
I see a family with a shopping cart in the vegetable aisle. They're picking out fresh produce like lettuce and peppers.
Good observation. What phrasal verb can we use to describe what they're doing with the vegetables?
I'd say they're picking out vegetables to buy.
Exactly. Pick out means to select or choose items. And if they want to make sure they have everything they need, what could they do?
They might look over their shopping list to check.
Perfect. Look over means to review something carefully. And if they decide they need more items, what might they do?
They could go back to other aisles to find what they need.
Right. Go back means to return to a place you were before. And when they're done, what's the last thing they'll do?
They'll check out at the cashier to pay.
Exactly. Check out means to pay for your items at the end. These phrasal verbs are great for describing a trip to the supermarket, don't you think?
Yes, they really help explain what's happening step by step.
Glad to hear that. Ready for the next flashcard?
This image shows a romantic dinner date at an Italian restaurant. A couple is sitting across from each other, sharing a pizza and coffee, with string lights creating a warm atmosphere in the background.
Perfect description. Let's practice some phrasal verbs related to dining out. What phrasal verb could we use to describe making the dinner plans?
He asked her out, and they set up a dinner date at this cozy Italian place.
Good. When they arrived at the restaurant, what phrasal verb could we use?
They were shown into their table and settled down for dinner.
Excellent. Looking at how they're interacting, what phrasal verb describes their connection?
They seemed to be hitting it off really well, gazing at each other and smiling.
Perfect. When ordering their meal, what phrasal verb could we use?
They picked out a pizza to share and ordered up some coffee too.
Good one. If they enjoy the evening, what phrasal verb describes extending the date?
They might want to hang out longer and head over to another place for dessert.
Excellent. And at the end of the evening, what phrasal verb would we use?
They'll wrap up their dinner and figure out when to meet up again.
That's wonderful use of phrasal verbs. Isn't it lovely how many we can use to describe a romantic dinner?
Yes, and the warm lighting and their happy expressions make it such a romantic scene.
Let's move on to our next flashcard.
This image shows a couple doing housework together. They're dressed casually and surrounded by cleaning supplies, with the woman sitting on the floor and the man helping while wearing blue rubber gloves.
Great observation. Let's practice some phrasal verbs related to cleaning and housework. What phrasal verb could we use to describe starting the cleaning?
They decided to tidy up the house and get down to some serious cleaning.
Perfect. When organizing cleaning supplies, what phrasal verb could we use?
They laid out all their cleaning supplies and sorted out what they needed.
Excellent. When working as a team, what phrasal verb describes helping each other?
They're pitching in together to clean up the house.
Good one. If they find things they don't need anymore, what phrasal verb could we use?
They might throw out old items or give away things they don't use.
Perfect. When cleaning thoroughly, what phrasal verb describes detailed cleaning?
They're wiping down surfaces and scrubbing up all the dirty areas.
Excellent. And when they finish cleaning, what phrasal verb would we use?
They'll wrap up the cleaning and put away all the supplies.
That's great use of phrasal verbs. Isn't it nice how many we can use to describe household chores?
Yes, and their cheerful expressions show that even cleaning can be enjoyable when you work together. Mastering the art of picture description for IELTS B1. Picture description is a crucial skill for IELTS, particularly at the B1 level. It assesses your ability to communicate effectively using English, even when words fail. In this comprehensive guide, we will delve into the intricacies of describing pictures, providing you with practical tips and strategies to excel in this task. Understanding the B1 level. Before we dive into the specifics, let's clarify what is expected of a B1 level English speaker. At this level, you should be able to understand the main points of clear standard input on familiar matters regularly encountered in work, study, or leisure. Deal with most situations likely to arise whilst traveling in an area where the language is spoken. Produce simple connected text on topics which are familiar or of personal interest. Describe experiences and events, dreams, hopes and ambitions, and give reasons and explanations for opinions and plans. The art of picture description. When describing a picture, remember to engage your audience by painting a vivid picture with your words. Here's a step-by-step approach to help you. 1. Observe and analyze. Take a moment to study the picture carefully. Identify the main subject or theme. Note the setting, the people involved, and their actions. Pay attention to the colors, lighting, and overall mood of the picture. 2. Organize your thoughts. Create a mental framework to structure your description. Start with a general overview of the picture. Move on to specific details, such as the people, objects, and actions. Conclude with your personal opinion or interpretation of the picture. 3. Use descriptive language. Employ a variety of adjectives and adverbs to enhance your description. Use vivid verbs to describe actions and movements. Use figurative language, such as similes and metaphors, to create imagery. Avoid using cliches and overused expressions. 4. Practice active vocabulary. Expand your vocabulary related to common topics, such as people, places, objects, and activities. Learn to use synonyms and antonyms to express yourself more precisely. Practice using phrasal verbs and idioms to add color to your language. 5. Use appropriate grammar and syntax. Use correct grammar and punctuation to ensure clarity and coherence. Vary your sentence structure to avoid monotony. Use appropriate connectors to link your ideas smoothly. Pay attention to your tense usage, especially when describing past events. 6. Practice speaking fluently. Practice speaking fluently without hesitation. Use fillers like and sparingly. Focus on the content of your description rather than the perfect delivery. Example picture description. Imagine you are presented with a picture of a family having a picnic in a park. Here's a sample description. The picture shows a family enjoying a picnic in a beautiful park. In the foreground, we can see a picnic blanket spread out on the grass. A variety of food items, including sandwiches, fruits, and drinks, are arranged on the blanket. A young boy and girl are playing with a frisbee nearby, while their parents relax on the blanket, chatting and laughing. The background shows lush green trees and a clear blue sky. The overall atmosphere in the picture is one of joy and relaxation. Additional tips. Practice regularly. The more you practice, the better you will become at describing pictures. Record yourself. Listen to your recordings to identify areas for improvement. Watch English movies and TV shows. Pay attention to how native speakers describe scenes and characters. Read English books and articles. This will help you develop your vocabulary and writing skills. Take part in language exchange programs. Practice speaking English with native speakers. By following these guidelines and practicing diligently, you can significantly improve your picture description skills and achieve a higher IELTS score. Remember, the key to success is to be confident, articulate, and creative in your descriptions.